Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee, including welcome to those watching online. If the fire alarm is activated, please vacate the offices via the stairs to my right, via the security door to my right, or opposite the lifts in the foyer. Please do not use the lifts. Please assemble in Hawley Square on the green, where officers will assist you and advise when it is deemed safe to return to the chamber. Does anyone intend to film or record audio of this meeting? I would advise that speakers using the microphones are picked up by cameras recording the meeting. Members of the public in the public gallery behind the speakers may be picked up by those cameras and have their image captured. Any member of the public who objects to the possibility of being filmed may wish to take this opportunity to move or leave the meeting. Would everyone present please ensure their mobile phones are turned to silent and that they are not used to make or receive phone calls or messages in the chamber whilst this meeting is in progress. I have the following members who wish to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1, Item 5B, Councillor Bambridge. Would any other members who wish to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1 please announce it now? Thank you. The following applications have been reserved for public speaking. Item 5A, Preston Caravan Site, Preston Road, Ramsgate. Item 5B, 23 Sevenstones Drive, Broadstairs. And item 5D, land between 44 and 46 Monkton Road, Minster. I have apologies from Councillor Dennis. Do I have any other apologies?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Mark Rattigan.
Thank you.
That one's not being spoken about, it's been withdrawn.
Hang on a minute. Just bear with me a minute. Sorry, a little bit of a correction to there. It's not item 5D, land between 44 and 46 Monkton Road. It's item 5, what is it? E. 99 Botany Road, Broadstairs. Councillor Bambridge, did you?
Yes, sorry, I thought you said that I was talking on 5B, whereas I'm talking on Preston Park.
It's been logged incorrectly.
Yeah, it's whatever it is, it's correct on the next page. There's a typing error on that one, I think. So, yeah, we'll get to it. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? No, thank you. So, agenda item 3. Do members agree that minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on the 19th of June be approved as a correct record? And do I have a proposer? Councillor Moore and seconder, Councillor Alban. Do members agree? Thank you. Do members agree that minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on the 26th of June 2024 be approved as a correct record? Can I have a proposer? Councillor Keane. Sorry, went blank there. And seconded Councillor Moore. Thank you. Do members agree? Thank you. Point of information, item 5C, AO3, land between 44 and 46 Monkton Road, Minster, has been withdrawn from this evening's agenda and will be reported to the Planning Committee meeting on the 21st of August. We have a second point of information which the Planning Applications Manager will now outline.
Thank you, Chair. On item 5G, which is the land east of Hayne Road, Ramsgate, the report outlines a condition to be added to safeguard the amenities of future residents in plot 14, requiring the boundary treatment to the rear of the plot to be increased in height to limit views from neighbours. The following condition is therefore added to the list of conditions as part of the officer recommendation to defer and delegate for approval. The condition would read, prior to the occupation of plot 14 on the approved site layout plan, details of the proposed boundary treatment for the property should be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. The boundary treatment shall be installed as approved in advance of the occupation of the dwelling, and the ground for that condition is to protect the living conditions of future occupants in accordance with policy QDO 3 of the Thanet local plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5A. The first item, Preston Caravan Site, Preston Road, Ramsgate. For public speaking, firstly, in favour of the application, Mr John Elvidge. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Members will have noted in the planning history section of the report a previous application for an extension to the caravan park back in 2002, which, although more than 20 years ago, has some striking similarities with this current proposal for a further extension. That application was recommended for approval by officers who concluded there would be no adverse impacts upon the character of the countryside, highway safety or traffic conditions, or the residential amenities enjoyed by local residents. Planning committee members considered the application, but following a site visit and in the light of very strong representation from the parish council and residents, refused consent, disagreeing with officers on all three grounds. On appeal, the inspector concurred that these were indeed the three main issues to be considered, but endorsed the original views of officers on all counts, in that there would be no adverse impact on the countryside, with the proposed screening also going some way towards improving the appearance of the countryside, saw no evidence to demonstrate a significant hazard to road users or be harmful to road safety, and in view of the separation between the extension and the closest houses of about 40 metres, was not convinced that any activity would have any unduly harmful effect. While that application and appeal took place over 20 years ago, the arguments against this latest proposal from both the parish council and local residents to further extend the park are virtually identical. And while the development plan policy regime has altered twice during this period, the overarching principles of safeguarding the countryside, traffic conditions and residential amenity, balanced with those of encouraging the economy, rural businesses, holiday accommodation and tourism generally, remain. The question for members now is whether the harm envisaged at the time of the previous extension ever materialised. In this respect, no adverse impact was caused to the character or appearance of the countryside. There has been no unacceptable increase in traffic movements or highway accident rates, and no detriment to living conditions for local residents. On this basis, and notwithstanding the submission of objections, on the balance of probability, there is no reason why any such harm will arise as a result of this latest proposal to further expand the park, especially given the significant additional separation between the extension and the closest residential properties at around 120 metres. In contrast, it will contribute positively to local rural business, providing yet further support for the existing businesses of the nearby cafe and pub. I there have no doubt that the author of the officer's report recommending approval back in 2002 would agree, and who, I am proud to say, is now the council's local plans manager, as he was the senior planning officer in my team at the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking against the application, Mr Graham Elliott, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, councillors, everyone. My name is Graham Elliott. I've lived in Manston Village for 30 years. I'm here to speak against the proposed expansion of Preston Park caravan site, Preston Road, Manston. I'm not a member of the Manston Parish Council and I have no political affiliation. If this application to expand the caravan site to fit in another 110 caravans, there are currently 202, it will mean a 54% increase in the number of caravans. But not just caravans, 110 more parking spaces, plus more bin areas, plus hardscaping, plus at least 12 visitors parking spaces and more parking spaces for commercial vehicles. If this application is allowed to go through, it will pave over even more top-grade agricultural land, and in doing so, remove even more open green space and fresh air from our village. In the last 5 years, we have seen 20 houses built at the Meadows, along and near the B2050. St Stephen's Park at the Hayne Road end will be another 40 houses. The landings just beyond, 153 units, as they choose to call them, and not forgetting, of course, the 785 houses to be built at Manston Green. There is also no small matter of another huge field to be built on at the reservoir end of Preston Road. So that's well over 1,000 houses and counting. If this application goes ahead, Manston will move closer to becoming an add-on to Ramsgate, Westwood and Margate. I'd just quickly like to say something about the parking. As somebody who lives in the village and regularly uses Preston Road for walking and running, I counted 8 transit vans today outside the park on Preston Road. With the 50% plus increase in proposed caravan sites, I can see that even more of these vehicles will be left in place simply for convenience factor. If the caravan park is expanded, therefore, I've no doubt that there'll be more danger for walkers, cyclists and other motorists on what becomes a very narrow section of the road. Can I ask that if members of the planning committee have not yet carried out a site visit, then they do so as soon as possible? So, in conclusion, this is why I'm against the expansion of the caravan park site. It is an intrusion into our countryside, and it will also increase traffic movement within and through the village. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Speaking on behalf of Manston Parish Council, I have Councillor Guy Wilson. You have 3 minutes. Excuse me, sir. Could you turn your microphone off, please? Thank you.
Good evening, members of the Planning Committee. I'm the Chairman of Manston Parish Council, and needless to say, we have deliberated long and hard about the extension. 5 of the parish councillors actually live in the village itself, some only yards away from the site in question. Our view is that the site has been run successfully, providing a good income for its owners, and there is no justifiable need to expand. Our objection was not taken kindly by the owners, who wrote saying that they would not support anyone who does not support them. This was hardly diplomatic, to say the least. The owners underestimated the overwhelming view of the people who live in the village that the application should be refused. The owners described the village opposition as a hate campaign. The committee needs to comprehend the strength of feeling in the village. The parish council's observations are that some of the additional units might be used by contractors and not holiday makers. The additional units would provide minimal economic advantages to Manston Village. They would increase the traffic on Preston Road and Spratling Street, both roads being single-track lanes. There is a high probability that if planning consent is granted, the owners will buy the adjacent land and then sell up to generate a massive profit and look to do the same elsewhere. It is overdevelopment and will have an impact on the local amenities, the local infrastructure, water, sewage, healthcare facilities, and public services that are already stretched. The holiday park is described as a quiet, peaceful holiday home situated in a beautiful countryside location. However, a disenchanted holidaymaker wrote a Google review stating that the best thing about Preston Park is leaving the place. Please reject the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking under section 20.1, Councillor Bambridge.
Thank you, Chair. I called this application in due to the impacts on the environment and infrastructure, most notably on highways, and trying to avoid an increase in vehicle congestion on Preston Road, which runs alongside the park. I, like many others, are disappointed about the loss of more arable land that plagues us as a result of our existent housing needs, but my main concern is the congestion and safety issue. Residents of the village and Manston Parish Council have been very concerned about safety in vehicles associated with the caravan park. Most importantly, the vans and lorries parked along Preston Road, which are associated with the park, already cause dangerous traffic conditions by obscuring visibility and narrowing the available width of the road for passing traffic. It's impossible for 2 cars to pass each other safely. I recognise that the village's main objection is that the existing caravan park doesn't have enough spaces for the occupants' vehicles, which are then parked on Preston Road. This new development proposes 100 new sites with a parking space each and 48 extra parking spaces for visitors. In order to solve this problem, I suggested that 7 to 8 of these spaces could be used for the obstructing vehicles parked on the edge of the park to be accommodated in the 48 additional spaces. I've talked to and been assured by the applicant's planner that in addition to the 48 spaces, there will be 10 larger spaces for vehicles such as motorhomes which haven't previously been able to be accommodated. In combination, this should address all matters relating to on-street parking. I've been told that there will be no distinction between the two parks and that the parking is available across the parks. Is there a possibility, I can ask the planning officers and the committee, that this can be more clearly stated in the planning application to allay fears of further congestion on Preston Road with a promise of alleviating existing parking issues? If this traffic safety issue is resolved, considering the existing park is so well run, I personally have no further objection to the application.
Thank you. The Principal Planning Officer will now outline the report.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the application site, as usual, outlined in red, and the blue area outlined. The area outlined in blue is the existing caravan park. Preston Road is running along here, and this is Spratling Street along here. So an aerial view, so you can see the existing caravan park here, Spratling Street and Preston Road, the solar farm, and this is the application site running not quite to Preston Road, but at a sort of in this area and cutting across here. And as has been mentioned, it's an application that seeks consent for the change of use of the site to accommodate 110 caravans and associated development, also landscaping. So these are some photos of the site and around the site, just to hopefully give members some bearings. So this is a photograph, obviously, from within the existing caravan park, and we're looking towards the northern boundary of the site, which is screened by tree planting, as you can see in this location here. This is another view, again, within the existing park, and this is looking towards the eastern boundary, and again, there is tree screening that can be seen, and this is just another view of it. And as you can see, there are pictures of some of the caravans that are on the site at the moment, and there will be similar sort of caravans that would be coming forward onto the new site, but they may be slightly larger and more modern caravans. So we're going to have a look at some views from Preston Road now onto the site. So looking from this area here. So this is the view, as you can see, from Preston Park as you currently see it. You can see the caravans there, Preston Road, and you can see the caravans in this location here. Sorry. And this is the actual application site. So it's this area here, the agricultural field, and where the existing caravans are, you won't be able to see those. They will be screened by trees, but we'll look at landscaping as we go on. We're going to have a quick look at a view from Spratling Street and a couple of views from the footpath that runs around the edges of the wider field here. So this is a view from Spratling Street, and this is the edge, the existing edge of the caravan park that you can see, and the extension would come out from sort of in this location here and across this area here. And again, we're looking back at the caravan park here, and this is taken from the footpath that we saw, and this is another view further around from the footpath. And as you can see, there is quite a tree screen around the existing caravan park, which is the applicants are choosing or wanting to replicate around the extended part of the caravan park. So just to remind members, this is the application site we're looking at. It is, as has been mentioned, agricultural land, and it measures some 4.25 hectares. So this is the proposed layout of the caravan park. It will take access, as has been mentioned, from the existing caravan park. So this is the existing access here. These are the visitor parking spaces that have been mentioned, and these are slightly larger ones that would take the motorhomes and larger vehicles if they were to come on here, and there is visitor parking in this location as well as bin storage. As you will note, there is a landscaping green sort of edge to the whole of the site. And we'll look at that in more detail a bit later, but it is proposed to screen the edge of the caravan site with more trees and native planting. Each of the caravans will have 2 parking spaces. One will be a hard surface parking space and one will be a grass parking space. There will be cycle parking and there will be some electric vehicle charging points as well to serve the development. And as stated previously, the balance here, members, is the most importantly the balance between protection of agricultural land, and this is grade 2 agricultural land, so it does fall within the definition of best and most versatile agricultural land, and you have to weigh that against the the promotion of existing businesses and employment and economic benefits and social benefits that may come from increased and good quality holiday accommodation being provided. It is officers' view that in this instance, that given that the existing caravan park is here, it seems a natural location for the caravan park to extend, and it is considered that the nature of the accommodation that would be provided would be good quality, and it is considered in this instance that it would outweigh the loss of the best and most versatile agricultural land. So the development is actually proposed to be phased, and you see this is the phasing plan with a series of different colours around. So phase 1 is actually this red bit around the edge, and that is the actual landscaping bit we looked at before, and that doesn't actually include any caravans, but that would be the first bit that comes forward. The blue area is the next phase, and that does include, sorry, bear with me, 28 caravans, and it also puts their access link in. The purple area is the next phase, and that's another 28 caravans, so it sort of builds out towards the open countryside. The phases 4 and 5 are the yellow and green bits, and they both comprise 27 caravans each. So we have a landscape strategy, and I do appreciate it's quite detailed and you won't be able to read it, but it does, as we have looked at, talk about enhancing the tree planting around the edges of this new extension, and as we've seen from the phasing plan, that's proposed to come in at an early stage, the first phase of the proposed development, and it does involve native species and trees as well to help minimise the impact of this proposed development. This is a slide that shows, it gives an indication on these 3 sections below the sort of image at the top there. This is the planting in the first year as planted. This is the planting as it increases about 5 to 6 years later. And the last bottom image shows the planting some 15 years later when it's well established, and you can see the caravans sitting amongst it, and that they would be screened adequately, in our opinion, by those planting. So as stated previously, members, the debate is, I think, for members whether they accept the loss of this best and most versatile agricultural land, and whether they consider the harm and loss of that land to be outweighed by the benefit of the high quality tourist accommodation that's being created, and by the extension of the existing caravan park. It is not considered that there would be any adverse impact on the living conditions of adjoining residents, given the distances between where they are and where the extension would lie. KCC Highways raised no objection to it. There was a transport statement submitted with the application, and they're satisfied with the findings of that and the fact that there will be sufficient parking to serve the development. And there is not considered to be any issues with drainage or flooding or ecology. In fact, it could be argued that there is some enhancement to ecology from the creation of more planting within the site and it being tailored and native species. We do have a signed and completed undertaking for the required SAM contribution, So the officer recommendation is to approve, subject to the safeguarding conditions in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
Thank you. Before I take the first request for speaking, the eagle-eared among you will have noticed that I missed out one of the announcements earlier. Any site visits will take place for committee members on the morning of Friday the 9th of August. Please note that this is the second Friday of the month rather than the usual first Friday. Thank you. And the first to speak is Councillor Alban. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've got some questions first, please. First question is in relation to the land that they want to put this on. As you say, it's Grade 2 agricultural land. I would like to know, has it actually been farmed? The crops grown on it over the last few years? Has it remained just grassed area? That's the first question. Do you want me to take them one at a time?
If you go through all of them, we can get the answers as we go,
okay,
and then
that's
answer them all at the end.
There's only two,
Thank you.
really. So, previously, as has been stated, consent was granted on appeal, albeit 20 years ago. Does that appeal still hold weight in this on this application? And the only comment that I wanted to make, listening to the concerns in relation to the highways, Preston Road, etc., Spatling Street. KCC in their study have put forward no objections, providing that the conditions that they have laid out are then carried out by the developer, should consent be granted. So I think as far as we as a committee are concerned, if the KCC Highways have said in their opinion they've got no objection to this, I think we have to give that weight as well in favour of it. But if I could have those two answers, I'd be very pleased. Thank you.
It is farmed, or has been, but it's growing crops. But yeah, at the current time.
It's arable.
It's arable, yeah, sorry.
Sorry, could I just come back? I mean, do we know how many years or it's not been farmed or?
I'm looking through the agricultural land quality assessment, which is part of the application. It doesn't include the detail of the yield or what it's talking about, because it's grade 2 is rather than grade 1, is that it's because the soil quality, it's expected that there's reduced yields of arable in the summer months due to droughtiness usually, but it's still, it still comes under the best and most versatile banner effectively. As to the other question on the 2002 application, if we carry on with the debate and I can quickly have a little review of the appeal, I just want to check the documents, then I can come back on that if that's okay.
And the third?
I don't think the third question was it was more of a statement.
Was there a third question? No. In that case, Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Alban has already asked some of the questions, but I'd also like to know, the report states that the proposed site is for both static and touring caravans and for holiday use only. Do we have any way of knowing whether these are short-term lets, or do we have people that are virtually living there and just moving out for a short period of time? Do we have any way of knowing that, please?
We have conditions that we're proposing to put on, conditions 3 and 4, that do state that they are only for holiday homes, static and touring, and that they should not be permanent residential uses, and they match the conditions on the main holiday lets. So someone couldn't live in the caravan all year round. They're not designed for that. And they have to have a main home address in condition 4 elsewhere. So it is geared, for tourism uses.
If I may just come back on Councillor Orban's point with regards to the appeal. So the appeal, and Annabelle, can you go back in this presentation to the aerial image of the site, if that's all right? Thank you. Yeah, if you, that one, that's perfect, yeah. So the appeal, the 2002 appeal actually related to the right-hand side of the caravan park as you look at it. In terms of, therefore, its relevance, obviously, you know, it was approved and it was expanded. In terms of the issues that are looked at, I mean, fundamentally the issues are not necessarily different, but obviously that is an appeal that was determined specifically with reasons for refusal to do with traffic impact for those units, and also impact on living conditions as well. In terms of, I think, to the speaker's point, we are talking about 22 years ago, and therefore the planning regime has changed. I think the local plan does now, as it did then, support tourism development, but fundamentally that has to be weighed against the countryside impact and the impact from the loss of agricultural land. So it's a very similar debate to the one that was going on 20 years ago.
Thank you. Councillor Matterface.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a query. Could you go back to the original photograph of the access there? Those aren't caravans, those are park homes by definition, aren't they? Because they're permanent structure, they can't be towed away. And they're known as normally as park homes. So my question is, the expansion into the next phase, it says caravan holiday homes, static or touring. So are we talking about vehicles that will be towed in by a car on a regular basis, or are we talking about there'd be a mixture of something like you've got there, plus caravans, plus the park homes that you mentioned? The ones that would be mobile homes, I mean, sorry.
It's the latter. So in terms of this type of holiday home that you can see, that fundamentally would be allowed on the site by the permission. So it's not necessarily what you would think of as a caravan. I don't want to get into the definition of a caravan because it comes under various quite old legislation, but the principle I think that members should take is what is there at the moment is expanding into that area, to the point that's been raised and was raised in the actually the 2002 application. There are caravan parks, you're looking at the change of use of the land. The layout can often change because even though, as you say, these look more permanent, the question over whether or not they are a permanent structure is one that has been long debated in case law. And so there is always there is an element of inherent flexibility within, for example, the number that you get. That is often judged by a site licence that every caravan site has to have. That will be dictated by issues to do with health and safety, and to the point that's already been talked about that Councillor Bayford raised. You know, to add to that, there is the the terms of someone using the site and how long they live there is often set down by the company that run it, linking to that site licence.
No, the reason I asked was if you've got touring caravans, then you have got a vehicle towing another vehicle going on site, which could be a constant flow throughout the season. Whereas those, obviously, in that picture, and the static ones, it would be a vehicle coming and going, but not the vehicle towing another vehicle. Whereas, because the mobile homes would be slightly different, because that's all in one. Just want a clarification.
Councillor Keane.
Thank you. I wanted just to ask a bit more about, sort of ensuring that they're only holiday lets. Preston Park that is open now is open all year round. I read the bit about, that they've got to have another address, but if that's all you need to sort of say this isn't your main residence. So first of all, I wanted to know, is it planned that this new bit will also be open all year round? And does anyone check? So you get given an address. Does anyone make any checks that is a proper residential address? So in terms of, we've got obviously a few sites like this around the district.
A lot of them were granted in the 50s and 60s, and subsequent to that there have been various expansions of different sites. A number of those sites were under what I think most people would probably consider in planning as a bit of an old regime, that there had to be a period of closure where the whole park was absolutely closed, and that was minimised on certain certain parks to sort of 2-week periods. More recent planning law has indicated that parks can stay open all year round, but there are often controls, such as the ones that are put on the conditions, that are normally required to make sure that there is a way of the enforcement team at a local authority to check what is being stated as the primary residence, and also the condition which is saying that it can be no one's primary residence there. Now, the debate which has come up before a committee about these sorts of sites is, it requires enforcement, it requires looking at the list and actually analysing the list, because I think, there is the fact that people could write an address down, and it might not be that is that's the other address, that's a family address, or whatever it be. We can't, as a planning authority, presuppose that people will speak untruths on those documents, for one. Motivations of people is not something we can consider. The planning system is clear that if someone has applied for this to be a caravan park, that should be taken as read, but we are allowed to put certain conditions to ensure that is the case. And that's obviously what we've done in this instance. That's what's come through in case law previously in appeals. What we do, some of those sites do still close and do have that period. The enforcement team often write to people on a yearly basis and visit the sites unannounced and ask to look at the register and go through the register. The site licence as well is something separately that's reviewed by the environmental health team at the council. Obviously it's got separate things that they're looking at. And obviously all of this is linked to general council tax checks as well, obviously, because that's where there is potential that obviously if people are living here rather than it being more of a holiday home and it's their permanent residence, then there's a council tax issue. So that is then dealt with separately. It's not a planning legislation matter, but it's fundamentally a finance issue for the local authority. So there are things in place, but it does require checking and managing and resources to do that.
I am concerned about the loss of the agricultural land, and I wonder, it says about doing it in 5 phases to see sort of basically what demand is generated. So it doesn't sound very clear that this is actually needed for extra holiday homes, or certainly not of this size, if at the moment there's no guarantee that number of caravans would be needed.
Councillor Moore.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This question is levelled at Ms Livingston. Again, apologies. We mentioned briefly the 2002 appeal, so it was obviously contentious then with Grade 2 agricultural land, and it was approved. What is the probability that if this goes to appeal again, that we will have the same situation? Because if there's nothing there that we can really fight it on to refuse it, are we wasting our time by refusing it because it will be won by appeal?
Thank you, Chair. I think, speaking candidly, I think it is difficult to predict. Fundamentally, what we have to sort of talk to members about is making sure that any decision is reasonable. And I think in terms of the issues here, if members don't consider that the benefits from expanding an existing rural business outweigh the harm to the countryside and the loss of best and most first agricultural land, that is a justifiable refusal. As to whether or not an inspector would take those benefits and outweigh that harm, it is difficult. It's difficult to predict. I think certainly the officer view with regards to the highway issues, which were a primary issue as to why the application in 2002 was refused. In this instance, with the submission of a transport statement and data and junction assessments on capacity and review of the crash data in the area, KCC Highways haven't objected, and therefore I would certainly state that if a refusal came forward on that ground without any evidential basis of an issue, then I would expect us to lose at appeal, in my view. However, the judgment with regards to impact on landscape and loss of agricultural land it is difficult to predict. It is weighing up when reviewing the policy and actually what the reality of that visual impact is. And obviously Annabelle's gone through the views from Preston Road, Spratling Street, and the public footpaths which run around the site. The importance of the landscape character area throughout the whole of Thanet is more usually about long distance views and seeing the different aspects. The most important view, probably in terms of getting that, that sort of wide open landscape view, is probably from Preston Road. That is, whilst it's walked on, it's not got a footway, it's a rural lane, so it's more for receptors who are driving there. And then obviously the public footpaths that run directly around the site, you're right next to the site. So the view at the moment is you see an open field, but it doesn't necessarily contribute a significant amount to the landscape character area in our view. So it is a weighing up process, and we feel that there are benefits. I think a lot of this does come from the fact that it's an existing business and it's looking to expand. It obviously can't expand anywhere else. And it is a localised visual impact. It does impact on the landscape character area, but it's a localised impact.
Before I go on, asking as a member of this committee, one of the things that struck me was the staged process of the building over quite a long period of time. Doesn't give me a lot of confidence in a business plan that says there is an immediate need for this level of expansion. And I just wondered if there was an opinion on that.
I mean, fundamentally, with an area when it's being expanded, such as this for a business, there's nothing to stop any applicant that maybe gets permission for the entirety to phase that approach without any control from the planning sort of permission. It doesn't need to, unless there's a condition which requires mitigation to go in. It's not a requirement that the whole thing has to be built out. So obviously doing a phased approach I don't think necessarily harms the argument about the tourism benefits from the development, because obviously if the site is only part developed, then you've only got part of an impact on the landscape. So I think it's we wouldn't require a business plan as part of a submission unless I suppose it was fundamental to overcoming, for example, the reuse of a listed building, that we needed to agree that there's a level of harm from something that's occurring to a listed building, and therefore we need a business plan to show that the use that you're putting in there is the optimum viable use. This is actually relatively transparent in so much as it's saying, well, we're looking to develop it like this, but it doesn't necessarily harm the argument about the tourism benefits, because arguably if it doesn't all get developed, then you don't have as much landscape harm. So,
Councillor Garner next.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. I've listened to what everyone has had to say about this so far, and I sort of get the impression we're dancing around the main issue here a little bit. And the main issue for me is that this development, this application, would result in a significant loss of agricultural land and significant harm to the countryside and for us to consider approving this, I think we need to see demonstrable significant benefits to justify us doing that. And I don't think we see significant benefits to allow us to do that. We don't really see a significant, a proper plan that this is going to be developed all the way out in the way with this phased plan anyway. I know we often come look at applications for housing developments, which I know is not the same, but on agricultural land, on land that's been allocated in the local plan, so we don't have the option to refuse permission based on it being loss of agricultural land because it's allocated in the local plan. In this case, it isn't allocated in the local plan. It isn't an area of agricultural land that is allocated. It is within our power to refuse permission unless there are significant benefits. And I don't think in all our questioning we've had demonstrated to us that there are significant benefits. So unless anyone else can come up with significant benefits, then I don't think we have any choice but to recommend refusal of this application.
Councillor K-Bright.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Garner, for what you just mentioned. One question I was going to ask there is with regard to the economic benefits. The development here, it's purely holiday homes or caravans, right? So there's no other leisure facilities being planned in that would provide additional employment opportunities for local residents. So I've got a concern about that. It's literally just somewhere to rock up and stay. We do, exactly to Councillor Garner's point, we are being asked to regularly make decisions on agricultural land, and where they are identified in the local plan and its housing need, then I can understand it. I do have concerns around this, and actually when we talk about biodiversity net gain, if the land isn't currently being farmed, then it's going to be pretty biodiverse at the moment, and the soil health is going to be very good. One question I do have, actually before I get to that, I would just comment again on the traffic. I accept that KCC don't have any objections. My concern around here is though cyclists, pedestrians, we already have the highest level of casualties in Kent, in Thanet, amongst children, pedestrians and cyclists. I would be very concerned about a single track being seeing much heavier traffic. And a question I do have is around Green Wedge. Looking at this, as it gets developed out, it does start to be creeping toward the outskirts of the industrial estate as you come out of Westwood Cross. And it does start to mean that Manston as a village, I guess, starts then to bleed into Ramsgate. So I'm concerned about voting for approval of this, to be honest with you.
Thank you, Chair. So to just come back on a couple of those points, one to do with employment benefits. So the submission includes the fact that the number of employees is put forward to increase above the existing. So it's 4 full-time, 2 part-time. I appreciate it's not a significant number necessarily, but it does need to be taken into account that this expansion will result in more staff at the actual caravan park itself. I think just to pick up a general point about the benefits, specifically in the local plan there is policy EO8, which is about self-contained tourism accommodation, and that policy states that proposals for the development, diversification, upgrade or improvement of self-contained accommodation will be permitted, providing that it's sustainably located, a form of development that's appropriate for the surroundings, and with regards to caravan and camping parks, it's that it doesn't cause an unacceptable impact on the local road network and it respects the character of the countryside. Now, we've looked at all those criteria and we consider it to be acceptable on that criteria. The policy itself imbues support for this type of proposal. You don't need to demonstrate need, it's inherent in the policy. So members do need to be mindful of that when taking account of this development. It is tourism development, absolutely hits the criteria precisely. In terms of the concerns with regards to highways, I agree. I know that there is obviously an issue with regards to Thanet as a whole in comparison to Kent. Specifically in terms of the pathways for this site, that is what KCC have looked at, and looking at the crash data for this area and looking at the number of incidents, over that period of time, there is a number of slight incidents along the Manston Road from the Stanner roundabout to the village, but in terms of the roads in and around the caravan park, there hasn't been any crash data in that area. And obviously, even though this is a large expansion, the number of movements around these roads is relatively light in comparison to the major road networks of the district. And obviously highways have looked at junction assessments to see what the capacity is and whether or not there were any safety concerns. And to the last point about Green Wedge, so there is no Green Wedge in the local plan for the villages around Manston, Minster, Moncton. Now, the Green Wedge, the the main green wedges in the district are between Margate and Broadstairs and Ramsgate, and then obviously with regards to Westgate and Birchington. In terms of the new local plan, there is the option to reinstate what was a policy that was in the 2006 local plan, which was known as the Village Gaps policy. That was removed because the inspectorate decided it wasn't necessary, which looked to safeguard the character of rural settlements in the centre of the Isle. In this instance, you know, whilst it's technically, there's no doubt it's pushing north-east of the current site, so it does increase the amount of built form. You do have quite significant field boundaries and still significant distances from the development to the northeast, but it is something that certainly would be a factor in the new local plan about looking at how you try and ensure that the character of those settlements is retained. Obviously this is quite a unique instance because it's the caravan park, it's not the built form settlement normally, so it is considered to be slightly different on our side. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wing.
Thank you. I'm still a bit confused about the number of units, and I have a camper van, so I sometimes visit sites like this where there's a combination of static homes that tend to be owned by people, and it does say on the website that it's an owners only holiday park. So I'm reading into that you know, I'm a family and we buy one of the static units, and that becomes our little holiday base, and we come at weekends or when we've got holiday time. So I'm a bit confused about the nature of it, but if you go back to the map of the site, on a site like that where you've got a combination of, and I've towed a caravan for years as well, where you've got a combination of static caravans that are being towed, and camper vans, there's usually a distinctive site for all three of those. So I wonder where the caravans are going to go and where the cars are going to be parked, and I want to know where the camper vans are going to go, because there doesn't seem to be allocated areas for the three types of units, and there doesn't seem to be those units in terms of the numbers, because all I think we've got there are the static units. The four in the middle, are they the service areas, so the laundry units? If you've got camper vans, you're going to need toilets, so the four bits in the middle, is that the service area? I don't know. If you've got that number and then you've got half a dozen caravans turn up and 15 camper vans, so what's the exact number of units on that site? Because it's not very clear. And what is the nature of those units? So it clearly says here, owners only holiday park. I'm assuming that I buy my van, I buy my static unit, and I don't sublet it. But from what we seem to have heard, that maybe some of these units are being sublet, and that's creating an issue with parked vehicles on the road. And I know that we've also got the issue with KCC Highways approving this, but I would hope in a neighbourly way that the owners of this, if this is accepted, would try and find some way of tackling that parking on the road if it's linked to these units. So I'd like to know how many units are actually on the site, proposed on the site.
Can I just add, I think I know where the camper van bits are going, but I'll wait for you to answer that. But if I can add to Councillor Wing's questions, it would be where are the LSAN and the electricity connections for those camper vans, because I haven't seen anything on that.
So primarily the development is for the statics. So the layout that you've got are effectively caravans that are in situ. There are sort of 97 caravans. They're about 10 by 40 foot, and then there are some larger caravans, which are the ones you can see in the centre of the area there, which are sort of 20 by I think it's 48 foot caravans, which there are 13 of those. In terms of the area for effectively the tourist sort of ones, it is that entrance part where you can see the actual parking area effectively that's there. So what you're looking at is a replication of what is on the site at the moment, which is more of it's a caravan, but it doesn't necessarily move. It doesn't mean it can't move, and I think that's the important point. It doesn't mean it can't move. In terms of to the point about electricity connection, there are, from our side of things, from the planning side of things, all that we would get involved in as a planning committee is to make sure that there are EV charging points for air quality reasons for new vehicles. It's not within our purview to look at the details of the utilities that are hooked up, because it's fundamentally governed by other legislation about how you connect to utilities. So it's not something that we would control. It's not something that we would be concerned about in terms of the capacity, because if there is a capacity issue, that is fundamentally dealt with by the applicant with the company itself, rather than being something that's mandated by planning legislation. Councillor, I think you asked another question, and I'm afraid I've forgotten what it is.
I did, but I would view this development as overdevelopment. I mean, the one thing that I think the developer needs credit for, and I don't like the idea that we're losing farmland, and it does feel that we're forced to approve developments when it's in the local plan. And when it isn't in the local plan, I still feel we're forced to accept it. So I don't know if there are rules, there's rules, and I don't know why sometimes the rules are broken. But, you know, I'm a sports person, so if the ball either goes in the net or it doesn't go in the net. But I think, yeah, I think it's, you know, they should be praised for actually phasing it so that the ecology around the edge goes in first. But I still think it's overdevelopment. Although KCC have said there's no highway issue, I think there is a highway issue because it's a very narrow road, so it puts pedestrians and cyclists at increased risk, particularly if there's overspill. I definitely don't think there's enough parking spaces there. You know, each of those caravan units, if you've got big families visiting in the summer, could have 3 or 4 cars attached to that if they're coming from different parts of the country. So, yeah, I am conflicted.
I just want to come back on the transport bit and the parking allocation. So what's been looked at is, from Highways' perspective, these caravans have been treated as if they are 2 or 3 bed dwellings. So in terms of parking standards, that's applied to the rural parking standards of what you would get in a rural area where you've potentially got less access to public transport. So in terms of the parking ratios, that has accorded with, you know, the sort of strictures or policies of KCC with regards to that parking requirement. There is going to be, you know, there's an increase in movements from this. There's, you know, that's not disputed. But fundamentally, if the site is providing the level of parking it's provided, they are washing their own face in terms of trying to avoid further parking, you know, occurring on the public highway, which could cause obviously issues in terms of safety. And then it's also then about the capacity of the road network to support the number of vehicles that are coming in, which is again what Highways have looked at. So again, that's why, you know, we do consider that there's an adequate amount of parking on this site for the individual units. As to your point, it doesn't mean that it's a restriction that, you know, two people can bring their cars, but that is why there is there are 21 visitor spaces on the site. I know that that's a proportion of the overall, but that's why that's there.
That's part of the problem, isn't it? Because we're dealing with a caravan site, and yet KCC wants to apply residential rules to that. And we all know that come the summer holidays, half term and weekends, there will be a massive influx of people onto this site. So just because KCC decide to put that assessment, which I think is wrong because this is a holiday site, it's not a residential place, you know, we don't have to agree with it, and I don't agree with it, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not trying to convince you, Councillor Wing, but I think just to make the point that to put residential standards on a holiday park is more onerous to provide more parking than you'd potentially get for a holiday park, because there is more potential with a house that you have more people who are either there or visiting than you would in comparison to a caravan in this instance, just by looking at the metrics of what's provided on site. But that, you know, again, it's in the report in terms of the Highways comment what they've looked for.
Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. It's been acknowledged that the current site is well run, and there's no reason to think that extension wouldn't be the same. It's not on the green wedge. I feel that the phasing is a positive. I think there would be significant benefits to the tourist industry alongside a small number of employment opportunities. Highways have addressed the highways issues have been addressed by KCC. I don't feel it's therefore our our bag to use this as a reason for refusal. And I believe that the reasons for not approving this extension are tenuous. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Alban?
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Bayford just took some of the words out of my mouth, because I just wanted to say, when Councillor Garner was speaking, there are economical gains out of this. And let's not forget, we are actually a holiday area. People come down here to visit Thanet. So these people who are going to be there, they're not going to sit in that park. There's nothing for them to do. They're going to come out, they're going to go around Thanet. They're going to use Ramsgate, Margate, Broadstairs, wherever. So I think there are economical gains through this, and as Councillor Bayford said, there are some jobs that's coming out of this, should it get consent. And I would just take an issue with Councillor Garner, in a very nice way, Mike, that we don't have to refuse it. You saying there's no economic, so we must refuse it. I'll decide whether I want to refuse it, and I'll decide whether I want to approve it, or I want to vote for approval. We don't all have to follow the leader. So, and I will make my own mind up about that. Thank you.
Councillor Garner. And please, I don't want an argument in the middle of the meeting.
You don't want an argument at a planning committee meeting? No, the first thing I'll say, Councillor Alban, is if I came across as saying we have to do something, then I certainly didn't mean to say it like that. But I don't think the loss of agricultural land and the impact on the countryside is insignificant. I think it is significant, and I think there needs to be significant benefits to outweigh that. And to my mind, my decision that I'll make on my own is that I don't approve of it. So obviously, as Councillor Alban says, it's for everybody else. Yeah.
Okay, do I have any other speakers? No. In that case, we will now put the motion for the officer's recommendation for approval to the vote. Can I have those in favour, please? And those against? That falls. Thank you. Hold on a minute while we discuss. So we're going to take a brief adjournment. Would anyone who wants to help word an alternative motion, like to come forward to the front, please, while we do this? All right, thank you. We now have, we hope, an alternative motion. Councillor Garner, would you like to introduce, please?
Yeah, so I'm gonna move a motion calling, for refusal of this application based on the detrimental impact on the countryside and the loss of agricultural land. I think the details of which Mr. Livingstone has to read out.
Okay, so the two potential reasons for refusal would be that, one, the proposal by virtue of its location and scale would result in the loss of countryside and harm the characteristics of the landscape character area, which are not outweighed by the economic, social or environmental benefits of the proposed development. The application is therefore contrary to policies SP24, SP26 and QDO2 of the Thanet Local Plan and paragraphs 135 and 180 of the MPPF. And the second reason would be the proposed development would result in the irreversible loss of best and most versatile agricultural land. The proposal has failed to demonstrate that the benefits of the proposal would outweigh the harm arising from the loss of agricultural land, and that no other suitable sites of poor agricultural land. Actually, I'm going to remove that bit, sorry. So it just reads, would outweigh the harm arising from the loss of agricultural land. The proposal would therefore be contrary to policy E16 of the Thanet Local Plan and paragraph 180 of the MPPF.
Thank you. I'll take Councillor Garner as proposing that. Seconding? No, sorry. Can I have a seconder first, please? Okay, Councillor Matterface. Does anyone want to ask anything? Councillor Keane?
Why is the agricultural land point second? Because I think that's the most important one.
The order is the order. It's just the number of, it could be reason one. It's not a hierarchy of importance.
Okay, any other questions? In that case, I will move that the new motion is put to the vote. Those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Next item on the agenda is item AO2, 23 Sevenstones Drive. For public speaking in favour of the application is Mr. Niku Benet. I'm not sure if I've pronounced that right. I hope I have. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, councillors and members of the Planning Committee. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Niku and I have deep roots in this community. I was born in Margate Hospital, grew up in the area, attended our local state schools, and my family, which includes my parents, 2 sisters, 2 nieces and a nephew, still call this place home. Broadstairs is where my heart belongs and where we wish to spend more family time, especially as my parents age. Today I'm here to share our vision for the plot on South Cliff Parade, which we aim to make our main private residence. Our journey began on Easter Sunday 2021. My sister, who lives close to the plot, persuaded us to write a letter to the owner when she had learned that the property may be coming up for sale. I was contacted by the owner's daughter, who was managing the probate process. They had received more than 50 letters from developers and individuals wanting to acquire the site. Her late mother's wishes were not to sell to developers and to pass it on to a local family. This, combined with the design vision we shared, led us to being chosen over the numerous other suitors. The condition was that, as well as the undeveloped plot facing South Cliff Parade, that we'd also need to acquire the cottage on 23 Sevenstones Drive. We agreed and are already successfully, with the help of local builders, bringing a very tired and dilapidated cottage up to modern standards after achieving planning and no issues from any of the neighbours. My plan is to make this a home for my elderly parents. From the outset, we had a clear vision for South Cliff Parade. Our brief included not only family accommodation, but also a home office and a fitness space, all designed to maximise the breathtaking views of the sea and the well-being of my family. We carefully selected the renowned architects, Tomato, at an extra cost to ensure the highest quality of design. Their work brilliantly responds to the sloping profile of the land and the cliff top. The building's profile stretches back at a single-storey level, dug into the slope, particularly at the rear section. This has been thoroughly modelled and fully satisfied the planning officer's requirements. The design breaks up the building's massing with thoughtful composition and a contemporary look, using the highest quality materials, including local flint. This approach has been validated by Thanet District Council's professional officers who share our enthusiasm for the project. The final design, with the result of extensive collaborative conversations with planning officers. We made several adjustments to the original plans, including provisions for enhanced neighbour privacy, and our original application already ensured the flat roof would be inaccessible to prevent overlooking neighbours' gardens. In summary, this is not just a project, it's a dream for my family. We are dedicated to respecting this beautiful location with high quality design and enhancing the public realm from the clifftop view while safeguarding our neighbours' living conditions. Our supporting material demonstrates this, consistent with your officer's findings. It's more than a house, it's also our promise to the previous owning family to create a sustainable and considerate architectural expression this land deserves. Thank you for our time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you just turn your microphone off as well, please? Thank you. Speaking against the application, Mr. Darren Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. We've already accepted that this house is being built, but the common thread that you'll see online from every objection is this very long spur that houses the swimming pool and, more importantly, the elevated rooftop garden on top of the spur. The house is even called on the plans the long house, and that long bit of the phrase refers to this spur and the roof garden. The house is 12 metres wide, 42 metres deep. So what's my problem with that? Well, firstly, the spur has got windows that do look directly into my garden, window 10 on the plan. The spur is also 1.2 metres higher than my back fence, which I think you'll find contravenes guideline QD03 on the grounds that it gives rise to me having unacceptable overlooking. But the planning report, which I have read, informs me that in the case of my house, 26 Sevenstones Drive, that this breach is deemed acceptable. So all the guidelines that are there to protect everybody don't apply to me. I don't understand why. Now, while you consider that, this spur also has a flat roof, and on that roof is a garden, which has been referred to. This garden offers direct and uninterrupted views into my home and the homes of my neighbours. Now, it's been claimed that on the revised plans that this is an inaccessible roof garden, but it does have a door onto it directly from the house, and there's a gentle staircase to it from the garden. So here's what I think. I think they've massively overdeveloped this site, and they've left themselves with a tiny garden, and they're trying to get around that by having the garden on the roof. They don't think this roof garden idea is going to fly with the planners, and so they've decided to tell us, and you, not to worry, because guess what? This is a garden we're never going to use. We're going to all that trouble to design it, all that trouble to build access, but we will never, ever use it. I'm not making this up, that's on the website. It will never be used. That's exactly what's there. So I'm not sure what we're supposed to do when we look across at people using this garden, if there's someone in there. Are we meant to call the police? Anyway, I'll sum this up. I think everybody knows that if this roof garden did not have this stipulation of no access, then this whole plan wouldn't go through due to privacy. You've got to ask yourself how well that decision is going to stand up to a lot of publicity. Have you perhaps thought about mitigating this with a pitched roof garden, one that you can't stand on, rather than promising you're never going to go in it? And as for the overlooking windows, there's windows all over this building. You don't have to have overlooking windows into other people's gardens. So in a sentence, I would say none of us have objected locally. Put a pitched roof on the spur, remove the overlooking windows, and do something neighbourly.
Thank you. The Principal Planning Officer will now outline the report.
Thank you, Chair. This is the application site outlined in red here. So the area outlined in blue is the existing property in Sevenstones Drive, and this is the garden area associated with that property that fronts onto South Cliff Parade. This is an aerial view of the site. So the application site is in this location here. So you can see it has a deep garden that extends all the way down to South Cliff and is currently a gap in that street elevation. And then a view from the front, so looking from South Cliff Parade at the plot itself. So again, this is the gap here with a flint wall currently to the front of the site onto South Cliff Parade. And then these are some photos now of the site. So this is the boundary wall onto South Cliff Parade with the application site behind. This is inside the site, so as you can see, it is a garden area. There's a real level change across the site with the land dropping in level from Sevenstones Drive down to South Cliff Parade. And then this is some views of the street elevations. So this is number 10 on the left here and number 9 on the right here, the two immediate neighbouring properties. And you can see number 10 has an existing garage with the boundary of the site being just to the right-hand side of that garage. And number 9's boundary is just close to their side elevation. So this is just a closer view of number 10 on the left-hand side, number 9 on the right-hand side even, and this is the photo of their rear elevation. So they currently have a single-storey rear extension to the rear, and you can see the existing neighbouring properties beyond that as well, because there's quite a lot of staggering in the elevations along the street. And then this is taken from within the garden, so within the application site itself, looking back towards South Cliff Parade. So again, you can really see the ground level changes now, because this is taken in the garden, looking back, and at this point here, you're almost level with first floor level with the existing properties onto South Cliff Parade. So that really does drop in level towards South Cliff Parade. And then this is number 10, which is the property to the left. And then this is a view of number 10, sorry, not the best view, but showing that property there. And you can see this is the southern boundary. So the neighbour who has spoken is number 26 Sevenstone, which is on the right-hand side here. And this is the boundary between the properties. So again, this is just a further view further out. So just showing some of the other designs of properties along this stretch. So as you can see, looking to the right-hand side, you can see numbers 8, 7 and 6, South Cliff Parade, all of them very different styles. There's 2 of these are quite modern in design, as you can see in these views here. Again, because of the ground level change, you can see that the properties are actually raised from road level. So in terms of the garages, they're actually sloping up to the garage. So this application is actually looking to have a 3-storey level with the additional floor being at basement level, so this would actually, the driveway would actually slope down to create parking at a lower level. And then just again a view, just so you can see the full street elevation at this point. So the application site again is in this location here between these properties. And again, you can see again a modern design at the end of the road and larger scale prominent building on the corner here. So real variety in the character within the area of this site. And the site does fall within the area of high townscape value as well, so just to note that for members. So again, just another view looking of those properties there, and then closer view of those properties. And now going round the corner, this is now in Sevenstones Drive, so the application site is behind this property here. So this is number 26, and this is the garage here. So the application site is behind this, with the main dwelling being to the right-hand side here, but the single-storey extension that I'll show you runs behind this property. Again, from this photo, you can see the change in ground level again. So again, the property of number 26 is on higher ground level than the rear garden, which is sloping away. And this is inside the application site, looking towards number 26 and number 25. In this location here, again, this being the boundary. And again, seeing the change in level between the site itself and the neighbouring properties. So the proposal is for the erection of a detached 4-bed dwelling. This is the block plan of the proposal. The building is 2-storey with a basement, with an additional basement level, so 3-storey in part. So the main 2-storey element is this L shape here. So you can see it's set back behind number 10. This area here is a single-storey front projection with a roof terrace above that, and then to the rear, this is the single-storey projection that the neighbouring occupier that just spoke has mentioned. So this is a deep projection that runs down almost the full depth of the garden. And then this is the front elevation of the proposed development. So it's a very modern design. The first floor slightly overhanging the ground floor. You can see here, so this is the 2 elevations, one showing it with the front boundary wall and one without. So the top one is showing the front boundary wall, which will retain the flint wall but just build it up slightly above the existing height. And then the bottom image is showing it without the front boundary wall. So again, you can see then that additional floor at basement level with that parking. So it's 3-storey, this element here, but the majority 2-storey in this level here. So in terms of spacings between the properties, there's 1.8 metre gap between first floor level between these two properties, and there's a 7 metre gap as you view it from the road between the side elevation of this property and the 2-storey side elevation of the neighbouring property. In terms of the actual loss of space, it's garden land belonging to the existing property, so there's no concern regarding actual loss of open space. It feels like it is a gap within the street scene that could be recognised as a potential building plot. And given the fact the site's within the urban confines, there's no real concerns with the actual principle of developing a dwelling on this site. So these are just some other elevations. This is the rear elevation looking towards the rear garden. So again, you can see here the section showing the basement level. And then this is the side elevation. So now you can see the single-storey rear extension that has raised that concern. So this projects out, but you can see here the dotted line is the existing ground level. So there's going to be a lot of excavation to actually provide this single-storey extension. The 2-storey element will be constructed at a similar level to the neighbouring properties, and then the rear element will just be built at that same ground level, extending into the garden. So in terms of the boundary treatment, the boundary increases in height as it goes along the depth of the garden. So as you move along, this extension will slowly disappear from view from the different neighbouring properties that back onto it. So you'll see in a moment the section plans that show how that would look. And then this is the other side elevation. So this is the southern side elevation facing number 10. Whilst windows are proposed, they are high-level windows, and a condition is proposed that would control that to make sure there's no overlooking from those windows. You can see in this image as well the front terrace area. That's been proposed to have a privacy screen for the first 2.4 metre depth of that terrace in order to avoid overlooking back into neighbouring windows. And you can see here as well the front driveway and the drop-in level going down to the parking area at this point here. So this is a proposed basement plan, which is just a garage area. And then this is the proposed ground floor plan. So this is the area at the end containing a swimming pool and gym area. This area here is the main 2-storey part of the property with the single-storey bedroom projection to the front of the building. And then this is the first floor. So this is the first floor area here with bedrooms in this location. This is the front roof terrace. And then the 2-storey element stops at this point here. So the concern to the door, this is a door here which is annotated for maintenance access only to that roof space, with this being a green roof above the single-storey element, and then a skylight in this location here. And then this is just the roof plan of that 2-storey element there as well. So in terms of just some views looking at things, so this is the other part of the proposal was an outbuilding, which is in the far corner of the garden. So in this location here, so just to show you quickly the elevations of those, so that's the annex outbuilding in that location, and then just the elevation views of that. So that's the southern boundary, southern elevation looking into the garden, and then this again is the section showing it at the highest level with the ground level dropping away. So it's just a flat roof extension. It's quite far from neighbouring properties, and this particular outbuilding is considered to raise any concerns. It's quite modest in size. And then that's the view that you would get from the existing property looking towards it with a new wall that's going to be constructed of flint. So these are just the site sections just to show you how this would work on the site. So the top one is the existing site section showing that ground level drop, and then the bottom one is the proposed section plan. So the dotted green line is the proposed development. So a closer view of that is here. So you can see the dotted green line in this location is the single-storey extension, and you can see this line here is the boundary on the southern boundary adjacent to the neighbouring properties in Seven Stones Drive, and then this being the basement level in this location here. So in terms of the concerns with the height of the extension, the height of the extension above the 2 metre high boundary would be 1.2 metres, and then this would drop, and that's in the corner of the garden of number 26 Seven Stones Drive. And then as you move along the width of their garden, that then drops in height to 0.81 metres. So between one side of the garden and the other, that's the range in the height of the extension that they will see above the boundary. When you get into the garden of number 25, the extension will almost be hidden completely by the existing boundary treatment. So these are just some sections running through just to show again how that would look versus the boundary. So this is number 26's garden here, and these two sections have been taken, one from one corner of their garden and one from the other across the site. So this is the existing section. So again, the boundary with number 26 is on the left-hand side here, and then this is the proposed single-storey extension. So the extension itself is 3.6 metres high to a flat roof extension, and then the boundary would be 2 metres on the side here. So this is the height of the extension that the neighbour will see above their boundary, and then this reduces down to the other corner of their garden, to this point here, which is where it reduces to the 0.8. And then in terms of other sections, this section is taken through the garden of number 25, and then there's also a section that runs through the outbuilding as well. So this is the existing section that runs across from number 25, and then this is the flat roof extension. So you can see by this point, the extension is well below the height of the boundary treatment. And then this is just the outbuilding, so the far end of the garden existing, and then that's proposed. So that's the new boundary wall that's being erected between the existing property and the proposed plot. And then this darker grey is the outbuilding in this location here. So this is the street elevation of the site. So you can see that it's showing photos of the existing buildings, and then below you can see the actual heights of the building. So in terms of the actual scale of the building, the ridge height of the proposal is similar in height to number 10, very slightly below the ridge height of number 9. But overall it's considered that the building does fit within that street elevation. So being a modern design fits in with the fact that there are other modern properties in the area. Because the neighbour number 10 has quite a large space at first floor level to the boundary, it's considered that the spacing between the properties is appropriate, and it is a high quality design that has been offered. In terms of materials, they're offering stone cladding to the front, and white render and aluminium windows. And then this is just showing some images of that projection. So this is a front projection with the balcony above and the main 2-storey building with that first floor overhang. And then this is just showing it on site, so you can kind of get an understanding of that rear projection. So that rear projection runs along here, and then obviously drops in height in relation to the neighbour, and you can see the boundary along that location there. And then to the front you can see the drop in level down to the basement parking area. So you can see in terms of the actual property, it's set back quite a bit behind number 10. It's similar in level with the rear elevation of number 8. So in terms of actually assessing the impact on the neighbours, I'll just head back, I'll go with that one. So in terms of the impact on the neighbours, in terms of the depth of the main 2-storey extension, on number 9, it's following the similar rear elevation, so it's not considered there would be any loss of light or outlet to this property. They've got no side windows within that side elevation, and they don't project forward of their front elevation either, so there's no impact on that property, and no side windows within that elevation either, so the impact on this property is considered acceptable. In terms of number 10, the front projection is just in line with the neighbour's garage, and whilst there's a 2-storey projection at the rear that would extend beyond their rear elevation, there's quite a big distance, a distance of 7 metres that increases up to 9 metres. So from the point of this 2-storey extension to the rear of this neighbour, it's 9 metres. So there's considered to be no real impact from loss of light or outlet from the dwelling on their main rear windows. As I mentioned, the side windows that are within that elevation would be high level and a condition to be so they wouldn't be overlooking from that either. So the only other main concern then is to do with the impact on the neighbour from the single-storey rear projection. So there's a distance of 12 metres from number 26's rear elevation and the side elevation of the proposed extension. So whilst the residents of number 26 will see the extension, There's the 1.2 metres above boundary level, but as you saw from the photo, their garden does drop in level. So in terms of actually assessing the impact on actual windows within the rear elevation of the property, they are quite raised in relation to the level of the single-storey projection. So it's considered that increase above boundary height wouldn't actually have a significant impact on light and outlook from the rear windows of that neighbouring property. Now, the concern has been mentioned regarding the roof of this property and potential for overlooking. The plan is annotated as that just being a grass roof, which obviously we do encourage for ecology reasons and quite often helps with drainage as well. But obviously if it was used as a roof terrace, that would be a concern for us and that would result in overlooking of the neighbouring properties. So a condition is proposed that that area cannot be used as a roof terrace, so that it can't be used for resulting in any overlooking of the neighbour. And as mentioned, whilst there is that door there, that is annotated for maintenance only and would then therefore go alongside the condition that says it cannot be used as a roof terrace. So overall, it is considered that the proposal is of a good design. It's a plot that can accommodate a dwelling of this size, and that the impact on the neighbours is considered to be acceptable, subject to the safeguarding conditions that have restricted the windows and the roof and created privacy screens as well for the balcony, and therefore it is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
Thank you. And so I have Councillor Alban first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the main thing I was concerned about is what the neighbour is raising in relation to overlooking, and obviously the mention of a garden as such is not quite right according to the officer. I was thinking, is this going to be a sedum roof, which is water retaining, water diverting, which is normally used as on a roof terrace like this?
It's not specified. It's just down as a green roof. Fundamentally, it's more about its use, which we'd be concerned about, rather than the type of green roof it is.
In that case, then, I think the issue of the condition that stops the developer from using that as a terrace to be sat on, walked around, looked at, is a major factor for me for this. I think the design is different. Quite like it. I think it does fit in there, and I'm going to go to vote for approval. Thank you.
Yeah, I actually just raised the question of enforcement with Mr Livingstone just now, and so picking up on what you've just asked, I'm going to ask him to answer both of those questions at the same time.
Yeah, so just to clarify the point with regards to the condition, obviously if that area is used, then it's a matter for planning enforcement as to whether or not there's been a breach of condition. What would normally happen is that we would, if it turns out that there's evidence that it has been used, we would write to the occupier and state basically that there's a particular period of time where we would monitor. If the condition is breached within that time, or there's subsequently breached after that, then we would look to serve a breach condition notice. If then it's breached within the time period of that notice being served, then it's a matter for prosecution to magistrates. So it's an ongoing process, again, of monitoring. Obviously, we are, as always, in the situation where the applicant is here, so it's very much aware. But the condition does give suitable control over that area, but it would be a matter for planning enforcement and no other. So it's a local planning authority issue.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Keane next.
Thank you. With reference to that condition, what it actually says is about it won't be used, but they could apply to the local planning authority for written permission. So what does that mean in practice? I mean that they could apply at a later date and use it?
So, like any planning permission, if there was, it can allow anyone to make an application subsequently to vary or remove certain planning conditions. The wording of the condition is simply making clear that you can't use it, and if you do want to use it, you have to put in an application for permission. In that instance, obviously, if an application came in wanting to remove that condition, then it would be consulted on and assessed. And obviously we've made it clear that we would have concerns with that area being used, certainly if there wasn't, it's a hypothetical, but privacy screens or safeguarding measures, but that it would be a matter further down the road. And obviously we've just got to look at the proposal as it is and the condition as stated.
It's a question which comes up in the papers, and that is, why is there an extra boundary proposed when there's already, the properties around them already have their own fences? Because they've raised the issue of maintenance.
I think so. You're referring to condition 16 that's talking about boundary treatment measuring 2 metres in height as shown on the plan. So I think, from what I understand from the case officer, there's some elements of the boundary that may not be 2 metres, and obviously they're doing excavation works as well, so the actual boundary height could potentially change versus the actual floor level of the site. So all that's to do is just to make sure that there is a clear 2 metre boundary all the way around the development, so that the impact again on the neighbour is reduced. But there probably is around approximately a 2 metre height boundary there at the moment. But obviously, as you saw from the ground level, changes as it goes up.
Thank you. Councillor Makinson.
Hi. If I'm reading this right, the green roof on the spur that goes up the back eventually meets the garden that's rising. So does it just flow into the garden? I could see that would be a problem if you had children, but it's quite interesting. What?
It doesn't fall off the roof. You could toboggan down. The stops.
Just bear with us a minute.
Sorry, apologies for the discussion that's going on there. I think we certainly can reflect on the fact that what we're trying to make sure is that the condition, which is condition 13, is precise enough to enforce in terms of what is classed as the green roof on top of the flat roof area and what is garden. And that's the question in terms of how it flows through. Whilst certainly on an architectural level, I'd certainly think it's interesting. What I think, and this would have to come from approval of the chair and vice chair, given that they're the ones with the motion on the table, that we would adapt condition 13 and request details to show the delineation on site between the flat roof area and the garden, which would allow us and get submissions in prior to occupation, which would then allow us to make sure we are controlling the areas to be used. The actual extent to which that is a boundary treatment within the garden would be a matter for submission. So, it doesn't necessarily need to be a 2 metre high fence at the end of that flat roof stretch, for example, for design reasons. But I think it would be appropriate to do that in terms of the officer recommendation to ensure that we are safeguarding the particular point that's been raised, so that we've got a delineation that is in situ on site to which would be submitted as part of condition 13. So
would you be doing that after? This is approved now. Do you want to
Just to come back on that, in terms of procedurally, the motion that's on the table is as per the conditions at the moment. If the chair moves to amend that motion to include the provisions for a submission about the delineation between the flat roof area and the garden, and that's seconded by the vice chair, given that you seconded the motion, then that would then be the motion on the table that members would be voting on. So it would very much be that that condition would be updated, condition 13, to require that. So if that is acceptable to both you, then that would be then on the floor, so to speak. I think we've got a few clarifications though that are certainly wanted.
Okay, well, before we make that change, I've got Councillor Matterface first.
Thank you. I'm just looking at condition 13. It says the flat grass roof, so it stipulates their grass.
It's roof as well.
It says the flat grass roof is single story. It doesn't say green, it just says grass, which is normally green, but isn't always, because I've got some that are blue. Shan't be used as a roof terrace. Now, is this going to have some kind of boundary around it, like fencing, or is it literally just going to be a flat roof with grass on the top, with obviously access for someone to cut it occasionally?
It is the latter, in terms of obviously there's a slight parapet effectively, because you're going to have a lip, of course, on that flat roof area, but there's nothing on the plans to suggest that you've got something that's then on top of it. And that's obviously why we want to ensure that there isn't any prolonged use or access along those lines.
Councillor K-Bright.
Yeah, I mean, Councillor Mackinson pointed out my concern, which is that it's just designed to access easily, isn't it? And I know we're just about to go down the route of saying we're going to put conditions around delineation, but I do wonder if delineation is enough. I mean, as Councillor Mackinson rightly pointed out, if it's children, it needs to be difficult to access, which I guess is where the idea of a pitched roof comes in. I think the design is incredible, by the way. I think it's a really good design, but my concern is obviously for the neighbour.
I think, to the point about delineation, I mean, there's an element of this which is deterrent, but actually it's more about being precise in terms of the wording of the condition. And I think, given the discussions that have gone on, I think the added precision that's given by getting a delineation of the area itself does give the security that we know when the condition is effectively being breached. And obviously the neighbour, as with other neighbours around, there are concerned about this. And if it is used in the way, used in the way that it shouldn't be used, I have no doubt that we'll become aware of that, and we should become aware of that. But the change to the condition is one to add precision. It's inherent within the condition that we're saying you can't use it as a roof terrace. That's the condition on it. As for the details of what the sort of boundary at the end, if you look at the image, at the end, the other side of that skylight that you can see there is, that would be a matter for submission. I don't think we'd be in a situation where we'd want to define what that is. I don't think that's members, I think that's something that the applicant could submit to us, and we would then, as the local planning authority, have to agree to that, or say you need to change it.
Yeah.
I did just have another follow-up question. The gentleman who spoke mentioned window 10. On the plan, it looked like the windows in the side of the house overlooking the neighbours, which I think are nearly there. Yeah, that's the one. Obviously, they are directly looking into the garden, and I understand it's about 12 metres from the rear of the neighbouring house itself. Those windows, how high are they? Are they effectively skylights, or are they, how much oversight do they give of the neighbouring gardens?
So in this plan here, what you can't see, but because it's too small, but it's this annotation here where the mouse cursor is, that states that the sill level of those windows is 2.3 metres high inside from the ground level. There is also the condition, which is condition 12, which defines that as well and puts a condition on to ensure that that's the case. So, therefore, on that basis, you wouldn't get, it's up to the sky. Effectively, it's not, you can't overlook. And as well as that, less important, but the windows at the rear of the side element are also, they're hallway windows as well. So again, they have less than your habitable room windows in terms of usage on a more constant basis.
Councillor Moore.
So you've just proven that Councillor Bright can't see out that window.
Point of order, Chair.
Councillor Wing.
Will you go back to the, thank you, Chair, will you go back to the bird's eye view that shows all the properties around? So the nice little curved housing estate. It's in the plans. Sorry. No, the one that shows all the surrounding houses.
Sorry, is it the sort of 3D mock-up?
No, it's the one that looks from above that's got, it's like a block view from above that's got,
Is it the first?
sorry.
Is it the first image?
Is it the block plan? It's the one from, no, it's got sort of like the whole of the bend of the development.
Is it a picture?
Yeah, it's a drawing. Yeah. We had it up for quite some time. No.
Does that give you what you want or not?
Not really, because it needs to be in the stark reality of maybe.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's all right. It was the 3D, wasn't it?
Blimey, where was it? Yeah, that's it. So it wasn't a pencil drawing.
It was the 3D one.
It was a block plan. Sorry, it's a long night, but I have no problem with the first bit of the building. I think it's brilliant, and in that whole area, which I know quite well because I walk to Dumpton Gap on a regular basis, they're all different. Every single house is completely different. So in terms of that, it fits right in because it just fits in with difference. But what I have a real issue with is that projection out the back, because we talk about out of character, and I think that projection out of the back completely disrupts the sort of flow around that road, and it's out of character. And the other thing I have an issue with is, there's no delimitations on the end of that, and it goes straight down. So quite clearly, if it's a family home, kids are going to walk up there. They're going to walk onto that terrace. It's a grass terrace, so it's going to need cutting. So there will be people up there regularly maintaining it. And this time of the year, you're cutting grass at least once every 2 weeks. But the other issue I have, I think you said all the houses on the top side of it, the top of the bend, the gardens slope down. Now I have a real, and that single development going out has been built below those gardens, and I have a real issue with the flooding issue, because we are getting increased heavy weather. It's a fact, and even situations in my own home that were I could cope with and now not coped with in certain situations. I have a real worry about a massive downpour and it going all the way down onto that side of that building, which is no longer porous because it's brick. It would have just soaked through and been a sponge. So I have a real problem with the potential for flooding that side in the neighbours' gardens. So for me, there's two reasons why I find this difficult. I think the main body of the building is absolutely brilliant. I just have a problem with that extension going out. I have a problem with the roof terrace, which isn't properly delimited, so people are going to walk on that. And I have a problem with the fact it's out of character, and I have a problem with the fact that it could impact on the drainage of the buildings on the top side.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back on one point, which is about the impact from the length of the extension. I think certainly, obviously, this is a representation of how the 3D forms in the area work. I think the main thing that still needs to be considered when it comes to an extension like this is how visible it is. Because in terms of the judgment about what the impact on the wider character and appearance of the area is, then it has to be looked at in the sense of what do both the people from in the public realm experience of an extension such as this, but also to some extent the neighbours, but more in terms of if there is an impact on their on their living conditions. I think the concern in terms of that the extension and the depth of that is out of character with the area would be looked at by us, as it is looked at by us, and also would be looked at by an inspector on the sense of what harm does it have to the character of the area if you can't actually see it and it doesn't have any tangible impact on neighbouring properties because of the level difference. So whilst there isn't an example of a property that is as deep as this, that's the fact, you're absolutely right, it doesn't, in our view, have a harmful impact on the area of high townscape value or the character of this part of Broadstairs because you cannot perceive that depth from the public realm.
Do I have any more questions or speakers at the moment? No. Okay, hold on for just a minute. Right, we're just going to read out the wording for the amendment to the motion.
Okay, sorry, I'm going to slightly do this on the fly, but actually, can I just have a minute adjournment? Is that okay?
1 minute adjournment. We've got an adjournment. Okay, we're actually adding another condition to the end, and I'm going to hand over to Mr Livingstone to read it out.
So for clarity, and I think this is quite important, condition 13 we are proposing stays, because that actually is very clearly saying can't use it as a roof terrace. That's that. But to make it allow for that interpretation of that condition to be very clear, we're proposing to add condition 17, which would state, prior to the occupation of the dwelling hereby approved, details of the physical delineation between the roof area of the single-storey extension and the garden will be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. The works approved shall be carried out in accordance with the details prior to the occupation of the dwelling, and the grounds for that relate to the impact on living conditions of neighbouring properties. So it would be for the chair and the vice chair, if they agree, to amend the motion, and you'd both need to agree to amend the current motion on the table to include that condition.
I move that we accept the amended amendment there as a new condition. Would the Vice Chair please second? Thank you. Do members agree to the amendment? No. All right.
That's the motion.
Do I have anyone else who wants to speak? Councillor J. Bright.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my concern with it is that it could potentially cause a lot of problems with neighbours in the future. And I'm just thinking, is this condition going far enough to prevent access? Because at the moment there's still access from the house. There's still a door onto the terrace. Why on earth do you need a door there? Also, why is it grass, which is going to need cutting? Can't it be something like sedum, which is more, sort of maintains itself? Can't we be a little bit more stringent in the condition that we don't want it to be accessed? It cannot be accessed. It can be accessed for maintenance, and like normal roofs, you access the roofs by ladders. You don't need to have a secret door going onto the roof, which is just going to be tempting to use the secret garden. I just don't know. And also, just in terms of enforcement, how on earth are you going to enforce it? I just feel like it's going to throw up so many problems in the future. I think we need to be a little bit, I don't know, tighter on that condition. Robust. Thank you.
Councillor Wing.
Could I just ask some clarification on 2 points? I'm a bit unclear as to why it's been built into this application that at a later date they can come and change it, and I suppose that, but I'm a bit concerned that that is in there, because I've not seen that come up on other applications where we've had flat roofs, because we've been told it's a flat roof. And the other thing is, if they present this new information to put further delimitations on the roof, do the people around that get notification of what that will look like, so that they can further comment to the changes that might possibly or not possibly happen further down the line? And if a future application is put in to change the use of that flat roof to allow use, once again, will the people living around there be informed of that change and be able to make comment for or against?
So in terms of the point with regards to what's submitted in terms of the delineation, the conditions are not consulted on. The information that's approved, though, is uploaded and made available so that everyone can see what's been submitted as part of the condition, which therefore has to be carried out and therefore could result in an enforcement point. I think our recommendation is that it's been stated that the door, for example, is for maintenance. The condition is a standard wording of a condition, so that, unless there's separate prior permission at the end of that condition, is more for information. It is a standard bit of wording that is put on certain conditions. It's actually probably a template condition that's been adapted. So, but the point is that it doesn't stop an application coming in to remove that condition, or indeed, any of the other conditions that have been put on. The issue with the sill height, for example. But this is the proposal. I think if members don't consider that because they are worried about the delineation, or they are worried about the fact that there is this door, then the motion that's on the table can be voted against, and if that was the case, then obviously an alternative motion could be put forward after that motion were to fall to require information to be submitted. For basically it goes, you send it back to officers, we get the further information, we bring it back. Our view is that the conditions at the moment, as they're worded, do give us the security of the enforcement, and they would give us the precision to be able to enforce that. If members don't feel that's the case, then you can vote down the motion and then push it back to officers to get some information, and we bring it back to you.
Sorry, but I'm just going to ask about this door again. So the door isn't even a Juliet door. It's a door you can actually physically walk out to undertake maintenance, which I find quite strange because you can go out a door at the bottom and walk all the way round up with your lawnmower and your hedge trimmer, whatever you need, to maintain that bit. So the door's still a problem because why would you have a door there if you can access it the other way round? If you can get out that door and you're not meant to be on it. So it's you know, why isn't it why hasn't it got a Juliet thing so you can't get out of the door?
I think the intentions of an applicant are not something that necessarily get considered. It's the actual fundamental of what's been proposed. In terms of a door there, I mean, could be arguments to say it's simply more convenient, is an argument. But again, I think, to come back to the fundamentals, the condition itself, we think, does give that security of the enforcement. But if members don't think it's acceptable and they think that the condition itself is not enough, then again, that's and you want to vote down the motion to approve with that condition, then it would be about an alternative motion to request the removal of the door. It's those sorts of things that can be looked at. I think what this discussion has shown is that there are things that potentially could change that could make it acceptable, and therefore I think that seems to be that if members aren't happy with the proposal that it is, that potentially there is the option of putting forward a motion to look at certain factors to then bring it back to members. But obviously our recommendation on the basis of the information is to approve with these conditions.
Councillor Orban.
Yeah, sorry to prolong this, but if you take the door coming out of the building, then they need access to get to the end of the building. Not necessarily for the grass, so it's where the door's coming out, it's the end of that building. I'm just saying, but you've got to get a ladder up there, so who would want to walk all the way round when you could walk out the door? So, let's not get stupid.
Let's end this bit here. Can we go to put the amended motion for the officer's recommendation for approval to the vote? Those in favour? Those against? That's carried then, thank you. We are going to stop for a short adjournment. 5 minutes, please. Thank you. Okay, we're going to reconvene now. I just announced that Councillor Moore has had to leave, but we're going on with agenda item 5D, which is 99 Botany Road. Speaking in favour of the application, Mr. Ivan Del Renzio. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. I'm speaking on behalf of my client who unfortunately cannot attend tonight. She purchased the property some time ago and wishes to move back to Thanet. She's incredibly worried that the application is refused given the comments received from some of the statutory consultees. In Broadstairs there's been significant extensions, alterations and replacement buildings, and that's part of a pattern of development of seaside towns. Areas benefit from individual buildings of different shapes and sizes and ultimately different characters, reflecting the owner's individuality. Just look at some of the oldest parts of Broadstairs, which have seen constant sporadic renewal of buildings every 50 years or so, creating a varied, rich and vibrant area. It is simply Botany Road's time to alter and change and catch up with the rest of Broadstairs, which is going through a transformation. A prime example of this is Stone Road in Broadstairs, where many of the 1970s properties are being completely transformed into individual and varied properties, enhancing the area. With the risk of causing offence to some of the neighbours, the immediate area of 99 Botany Road consists of a grouping of identical bungalows set in the middle of a long road. The bungalows are incredibly uniform, so much so on my initial visit I knocked on the wrong door twice. The uniformity of materials and repetitive design of the bungalows in this instance is not necessarily a positive. Many of these have also been substantially altered with dormers at first floor and large extensions to the rear. The revised proposals do not differ in scale to applications at numbers 35, 55, number 70, number 91 and 147, approved within the last 3 years or so. Properties to the northern end of Botany Road have been substantially altered with modern materials, which include also Juliet balconies to the rear. The current scheme has been reduced in scope with removal of roof terraces, reduction in ridge height and retention of the original bungalow features to the front. I hope the councillors and the committee will hopefully approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking against the application, Ms. Amanda Taylor. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Concerned neighbours and I are here to ask that you consider refusing this application. We build on our objections, plus those from the Broadstairs Society and Town Council, who unanimously recommend refusal on multiple grounds, highlighting that the amendments proposed don't address the concerns. There are 2 key points that I'll make tonight beyond the existing objections. Firstly, respectfully, there are factual inaccuracies in the Planning Officer's report that may unfairly influence the Council's consideration of the impact on neighbours. Secondly, despite 2 requests, no site visit to neighbouring number 97 has been conducted. Without seeing the site from this side of the boundary, it's impossible to give due regard to the impact on neighbours. On the proposed large rear extension on the boundary line, I'm very concerned that the officer's assessment of impact on neighbours is based on inaccurate assumption. The final para on page 107 through 108 is factually incorrect. Without a site visit, our house is presumed to reflect the layout of the applicants. It does not. We have over 4 windows here. The conservatory extension, our main living space, has another 5 glass windows and a glass roof that would all be affected. So the large extension with gable roof, which the officer was concerned about, will have a more detrimental impact on our light and outlook than assessed. It's overbearing, leading to a sense of enclosure and loss of amenity. No light test seems to have been done. The officer's conclusion that this complies with QDO3 and the NPPF is therefore fundamentally inaccurate. On the internal courtyard, the officer's report incorrectly states that the wall is 2 metres high. It's actually 187 centimetres. Moreover, the gradient and height of our floor level, which have been overlooked due to no visit, mean that it doesn't have the privacy of a 2-metre wall. From our kitchen window, I can see clearly into the area proposed to have 7 clear glazed doors and windows all facing us. And I'm not 2 metres tall. We can't build an internal wall or plant bushes to mitigate the proposal, as there's no space on our side. This is a dramatic change of use which will result in an unacceptable increase in traffic, noise, disturbance and light, which will permanently destroy the privacy that we have. I know another application in this road which saw the use of an outside area change materially was also refused on these exact grounds. On the balcony, the size is reduced, but the neighbour behind remains very concerned about it looking straight into her bedroom and living room, another invasion of privacy. We agree the house needs work. The applicant led us to believe it would be a dormer extension, but clearly it's not. The councillor suggested mediation. We were willing, but the applicant refused. We remain open to this. To summarise, no one has undertaken a site visit to our side of the boundary to see the impact, and there are clear factual errors in the officer's assessment. As a result, we don't feel like we've had a fair hearing. We're happy to invite you to a site visit to see the problem for yourselves. I am extremely concerned that you'll be making a decision tonight based on incorrect information provided to you, and that this will forever detrimentally impact our home and privacy. There's unfortunately no time to summarise the other objections, but I hope you'll look at the other concerns raised by the Town Council Broadstairs Society. I was going to say Councillor Alan Munns was supportive, but he had to attend a funeral today, so couldn't attend. We ask the committee to refuse this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Please. The Principal Planning Officer will now outline the report.
Thank you, Chair. This is the site outlined in red here. So Botany Road is on the right-hand side, and then to the rear is neighbouring properties within Tenham Close in this location here. So this is an aerial view of the site. So this is the application site in this location here. So you can see it's one of many bungalows that are located within Botany Road. You can see that currently the existing property has a single-storey rear extension similar to both of the adjacent neighbouring properties, with the number 97 having a conservatory, number 101 with an extension. And you can see the relationship with the property within Tenham Close at the rear. And then this is just another view showing that as well. And then these are some photos from Botany Road looking towards the site. So this is the application site in this location here. So you can see it's a standard typical bungalow. Most of the properties in Botany Road are very similar in design. Many of them are just a pitch roof with bay window features to the front and garages to the side. You can see that number 101 has recently been extended. So this actually, the design of this differs to what you just saw in the aerial view. So they've had dormer windows attached to their property. And you can see that there's dormer windows currently on number 97 as well. So just views then of the property with the neighbours. So again, the application property is in this location here with number 97 on the left, and then just showing a bit more of a side view of number 97. And then just looking towards number 101, and again a bit more of a side view there. So you can see again they've got a dormer window at the front and a dormer window at the side, but have maintained the pitch roof at the front. And then just showing the context of the area. So you can see in this image properties within the street. So we've had a number of applications over the years for roof alterations to properties in Botany Road. So there's lots of evidence of different style dormers and gabling of roofs within the street. So this is an example of one further down Botany Road, closer to the coast. And this is more of a modern design, but has maintained the bay window projection, but obviously has gabled the actual roof. And has some dormers on the side. So I'm just showing you this because this is actually quite similar to the design that's proposed of this application. So just a view back of that design, and then just showing that within the context of the road. So you can see in terms of the actual street elevation, whilst it's quite a change, it actually is set back from the front, and you can see the ridgeline just follows the ridgeline of other properties in the street. Just other examples of other similar style ones. So again, this is for also within Botany Road, again with a gable frontage recently being constructed that's set back and also has the dormers and then a gabling of the front projection. And then just another one that doesn't have the gable, but again showing modernising of them. And then this is just a view, it's not the best view, but from the rear, just from the Tenham Close, trying to get a view showing you the distance. So the neighbouring property at the rear, their boundary runs along the edge of this garage, and the boundary of the site is there, and you can just see that's the sort of the distance to the property. So this was the originally proposed plans that were submitted to us. The proposal was to quite modernise the property. It sought to increase the ridge height, to create a curved ridge, to change window proportions, remove the front bay window, and to add materials to the front that aren't really visible elsewhere in the street. And to the rear of the property, it was proposed to have a rear balcony. So quite a lot of concerns were raised from residents to the application, concerns from the neighbour to the rear regarding the overlooking from the balcony, and concerns from everybody else really regarding the actual design of the building and the impact on neighbours from that. These are just the side views of that original submission. So you can see there was quite a few sort of structures that were extending out from the rear that neighbours raised concerns with. And again, the balcony was in this location here at the rear. And you can see in terms of the front elevation, it was a full gable right up to the front of the building. So there was concern about actual dominance of the roof as well because of the loss of the front bay projection. So this is now this is the existing, of the elevation, and then this is now the proposed elevation of the proposed alterations. So it's now intended to keep the ridge line as it is, so that's not been increased. They are gable in the front elevation, but this now has been set back, so it's behind a front hipped roof that will be above the existing bay, so they're looking to retain that bay window now. So the window proportions have been changed back to the window proportions that were originally on the building at the ground floor level. More sympathetic materials have been introduced back to the property, so we have tile hanging and then render with like an olive green colour and aluminium windows. On the left hand side, this is where the current garage is, and they're looking to create a timber elevation there, with this extension here which is further back, so this is quite close to the rear elevation of the property, which is so partly to the side, partly to the rear, and you can see in terms of that the design of that extension follows the design of the main building. So this is the existing rear elevation, and this is the proposed. So at first floor level, the balcony has been removed, but a balconette has been replaced there instead. So you obviously can't walk out onto that area, but you would be able to open a door within that space. And then these are two rear extensions. So the rear extension on the left is to replace the existing conservatory, and then this is a deeper extension on the right hand side, which I'll show you the side view of. This is a side elevation, so this is facing number 101, and then this is that side view now facing them. So again, the ridge height remains the same. The changes to the roof are that it's gabled at the front and rear, which again, as you saw from other photos of properties in the street, there's a number of properties that have done this extension at roof level. At the front, it was gabled right to the front here, so this has been now set back, so we now have the roof hip over the bay and then a further setback before reaching the actual main gable. And at the rear, this is the one of the rear extensions, and then this is a further rear extension that's on the other side. And then this is the other side extension, so facing number 97. So this is the location of the existing garage, so that this replacement with this extension is basically on the same footprint as the garage. It's flat roof, so it's not considered that that particular aspect of the proposal would increase any impact on the neighbour. But the area referred to by the neighbour who just spoke is this area here. So this area would become an external like terrace space. So obviously it's already an external space at the moment that could be used to sit in, but the way it's been shown on the plan is that that's more of a now a designated seating area. So there's chance of there having slightly more activity there than there would do from the current layout, but at the same time that in itself doesn't need permission because it is just part of their garden and they could actually use that in that way at the moment. So this is the point where the neighbour just has mentioned the 2 metre high boundary, which the applicant has confirmed that was existing. So obviously if that is an error, I do apologise for that's been shown slightly short within the report. There was a condition that's proposed for the 2 metre high boundary to be retained. Obviously if it isn't a 2 metre high boundary, I think we need to consider whether we need to amend the wording of that to actually say it should be a 2 metre high boundary. In terms of the rear extension, this is a rear extension that projects up to the boundary with number 97, and I'll show you the impact on the neighbour, but in terms of how much it projects beyond the rear, obviously part of it is to the side, but then from this part here is beyond the neighbour's rear elevation, although they, as you saw from the original plan, they do have a conservatory. So I'll just show you the floor plans now. So this is the existing ground floor plan of the property. So again, you can see the garage there, which is being replaced with the new side extension. You can see the existing conservatory at the rear, and this is now the proposed extension. So I don't know if you can see slightly, there's some red dotted, like dashed lines. That's the lines of the existing building. So the current extension extends to this line here. So in terms of the extension on the right-hand side, that's only extending 0.8 metres deeper than the existing conservatory. And there is a 1 metre gap to the boundary as well. And then on the neighbour side, because they have like the gap of the garage, there's another 2.4 metre gap before we reach the neighbouring side elevation. So a total of 3.4 metres between that side elevation and the neighbouring side elevation. And as you saw from the original plan, they also have a rear extension. So this extension here is not considered to result in any significant impact on number 90. Not 90, sorry, 101 on the right hand side. On the left hand side, you can see here again, this is the internal courtyard area that was referred to. So this is the area that suggesting that they would use that more for a seating area. So again, that's the area where we were looking to have a condition regarding the boundary treatment. And then this is the projection of the extension on the boundary. So the extension is 5.3 metres deep. It extends 2.6 metres beyond the existing conservatory. So it is quite a deep extension on the boundary. But I'll show you the block plan in a moment. That's the existing loft space, and then this is the first floor plan. So they're now proposing a bedroom at first floor level with the bathroom at the front, and then this would now be a balconette. So there's a condition saying they wouldn't be able to use that space, or that's just a balconette only, no balcony in that location. And then you can see in this location here that would be a void above the ground floor level within the single story extension. And then that's the existing roof plan and the proposed roof plan. And then this is it sitting within the street elevation. So it's now considered, following the amendments, quite extensive negotiation took place on this to get these amendments, and we're now satisfied that the design does fit in with the character of the area, maintaining the bay window to the front and with the setback of the gable in order to reduce the dominance of the building and to maintain window proportions. And whilst it's slightly modernising, as you saw from that earlier photo, there are properties down the road that have done very similar things. So we don't consider that in terms of its design, it's something that would be significantly out of character of the area. In terms of this assessment on the neighbour, so as you can see from this block plan, the neighbour's got an outbuilding in this location here, and then a rear extension in this location here, or conservatory in this location here, so the windows are around this conservatory. So obviously when we assess the impact on neighbouring light and outlook, we'd be looking at ideally the 45-degree line from the centre of the nearest window within the rear elevation. So using the rear elevation, obviously that's fully glazed, so we would actually be taking a 45-degree line from the centre point of the conservatory out, and obviously the extension would not actually fall within that space. The main impact probably on the neighbouring property is more so from their own outbuilding than it would be from the extension itself. So it's not considered that this extension, whilst that deep and on the boundary, would significantly impact on neighbouring windows. The side windows, I believe neighbours mentioned that there's 4 windows within that side elevation. And obviously we don't know exactly what those windows serve, but they are side-facing windows. They aren't offered as much protection anyway as main front and rear habitable room windows would be, and they tend to be more the non-habitable rooms or secondary windows anyway to serve a building. So the impact on the neighbours is considered to be acceptable. In terms of the distance, even with that turned into a balconette, there's a distance of 18 metres to the rear boundary and 29 metres to the neighbour's rear elevation at the rear. So whilst there still would be this first floor window, neighbouring properties along here again who have converted their roof and added dormers, there's windows and overlooking from that that level anyway, and at that distance of 29 metres, it's not considered we could justify refusing that on overlooking. In terms of the side elevations of the roof, there's 2 VLUX windows proposed, and we're recommending a condition that obscure glazes those windows. And therefore it is recommended for approval. It's considered that the impact on the character of the area and neighbours is satisfactory, and therefore recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
Thank you. Do I have any speakers? Councillor Alban.
But while I'm here, I might as well, mightn't I? I like the design, quirky for there, but I think it fits in there okay. Slightly concerned about that extension on the that faces 97. Looks a bit bulky, but I think providing that there is that wall's put in, or that fencing, or whatever it's going to, that 2 metre high, then I think that would suffice in protecting the residents from overlooking. So that's just my views on it at the moment. Thank you.
Councillor Garner.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I do find it quite difficult to be sure about this and the issues around overlooking, the issues around light, and it's obviously generated some interest locally with the neighbours and others there. There's been quite a bit of emotion about this, and I'm personally, for myself, quite keen that we do all that we can when making this decision to satisfy everybody, that we've done as much as we can to come to the right decision. And I personally would like to take the opportunity to go out and have a look at the site, to do the right thing and to be seen to be doing the right thing before I make a decision about this. And I would ask that we all consider for ourselves whether that might be the right thing to do for this application in this circumstance. Thank you.
Councillor Kay Bright.
I was looking at this, and I think it's a really strong design. I think the objection around the courtyard, I don't understand, because anyone can put a deck chair wherever they want in their own garden and have whatever conversations they want. But I agree with Mike. There's obviously such a strength of feeling here. Broadstairs Town Council has rejected it twice. The Broadstairs Society has rejected it. Now, if my gut feel is I would approve this, there's a disconnect there. I need to be able to see it, and I would be happy to go on a site visit.
Councillor Alban.
I think that's probably the right way forward. And is it possible that we could propose that now for a site visit, Chair? If Mike, Councillor Garner wants to put that forward, I would certainly second that.
I would normally wait for 50% of people to have mentioned that they would like a site visit. However, I've got 3 that have said it. I saw Councillor Keane nod, who has just indicated. Councillor Matterface has indicated. So that makes 6. So I'm going to suggest that we withdraw the motion and get the approval, obviously, of the Vice Chair. Would you second that? And in that case, I'll put the motion that we defer this for a site visit. And can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Alban. And now would everyone who agrees with the site visit please vote? That is carried. Thank you. Just a reminder that the site visit date is the second Friday of the month, and I'm just rummaging my pages to check the actual date.
Sorry, I just saw it.
I think it's the 9th.
Yeah,
Yes,
it'll be at
it's the 9th. It will be the 9th at 9:30. Thank you. Okay, that concludes the public speaking for this meeting. I will call upon the clerk to read out the remaining planning applications. If a member wishes to reserve an application, will they please call out as the clerk reads?
Thank you, Chair. We have A05, Visitor Information Point, Victoria Parade in Broadstairs. Then we have DO6, St. Lawrence in Thanet Junior Academy, New Wington Road, Ramsgate. And the last one is DO7, Land East of Hain Road, Ramsgate.
Thank you. Can I have a proposer to move that the applications that have not been reserved be determined in accordance with the officer's recommendations, proposed by Councillor Keane and seconded by Councillor Alban? For the benefit of the public, do members agree? For the benefit of the public, I will call upon the clerk to read out the applications that have been determined.
Thank you, Chair. We now have just two, which is AO5, Visitor Information Point, Victoria Parade, Broadstairs, and DO6, St. Lawrence in Thanet Junior Academy, Newington Road in Ramsgate. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to the final item on the agenda, which is item Land East of Hain Road.
Chair,
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, I have to leave, if that's okay with you. Thank you.
Thank you. I would ask the officer to present.
Thank you, Chair. This is the application site here. So it forms part of a allocated housing site that's previously had planning permission. So this is for a small part of the site, which is why the red line is strange. This is showing the access running to the site, and then the site is in this location here, which is at the south of phase 1 that has previously been approved. So this is the aerial view of the site. So it's Manston Green site. So this is phase 1, and then in this location phase 2 and above the road, and then phase 3 in this location here. And this is just a view again showing that. So the actual application site before you is in this location here, just east of Hain Road. And then just a closer view of that area. And then this is just a view. So development has commenced on site. So you can see that this is the road being constructed currently. So that has been commenced under the currently extant consent of the outline and the reserve matters for phase 1. So this is the proposal. So the site falls under policy SP15, which is allocated for 785 dwellings at a density of 35 dwellings per hectare. The site as a whole had outline consent for 785 dwellings, but then the reserve matters that have been submitted with each phase have totalled 743 dwellings. So the overall number falls short of the total allocation by 42 dwellings. This application is a full application for 40 dwellings, but it's only for an additional 13 dwellings to that that's previously been approved through the reserve matters. 27 of the dwellings are basically just being reconfigured on the site because they're having to move because of the additional dwellings being added in. So really, this is an application for additional 13 dwellings. So the proposal, in terms of principle of the development, complies with policy SP15. It still falls within the allocation number, and the site itself of the actual proposed development falls within the developable area that has previously been approved. So just to show you the comparison between what was previously approved and what is now proposed, this is the current proposal, which is for these 40 dwellings along the southern boundary. So you can see there's a mix of semi-detached units, a few detached units on the corner, and then a block of some terrace units. These areas here are in the grey aren't being touched through this application. And then this is just showing the previously approved application. So basically what has happened in order to allow these additional 13 dwellings is that the majority of the units through the approval were detached units. There was garages in between the plots, quite a lot of space in between the properties. So you can see all the way along that southern boundary they were detached. And again in this location here, and then just jumping back to this one, you can see quite a lot of them are now semi-detached, and some of the garages have been removed, which KCC don't consider as parking spaces anyway. But in terms of actual spacing between the units, so whilst these additional units have been added, it's still considered to be a sort of a low density scheme. In terms of spacing between units, there's a minimum gap of 4.5 metres between the dwellings, sometimes increasing to 6 to 8 metres between the properties. All of the proposed dwellings are 2-storey in height, similar design and material padded to that previously approved. And then in terms of the actual design of the units, so I'll just show you here. So there's 3 street elevations I'm just going to show you. So one is this location here, one then wraps around all the way along the south of the boundary here, and then the other one is the front of these units. So this is that one to the top. So you can see just a variation in different building designs. Then this is that main elevation running along the southern boundary. So you can see all similar style buildings, pitched roofs, brick, some black cladding on the gable ones on the corners. And then these are the units that are within Street Elevation C, which were on the right-hand side, facing into the development. Again, similar style units. In terms of hard surfacing, that follows again what was previously been approved on the other phases. So it's tarmac for the road so the lay-bys, but then everything else, all the other parking spaces, all the driveways and things are all permeable paved. And then in terms of soft landscaping, this is the previous approval on the left, and then on the right is the proposed. So this is just showing the western half of the development. So in terms of where there has been a change, you can see that on the left-hand side here, there has been a reduction in the setback of the open space from Hayne Road. So that has now reduced, but there still is a 30-metre setback from the road. Obviously, part of the original application as well was to try and maintain a landscape buffer along that frontage, and you can see that on the proposed landscaping plan that's still been maintained. In terms of tree planting, the number of trees that wrap around the road remain the same. So there's the only loss of the tree planting has been the few that have been removed from that location there, where there was 3 planting there, and obviously the depth of that area is slightly reduced, but otherwise there's still as many tree planting as before. None of the development extends into the previously approved open space, all of it within the area that was previously approved for development. And then this is just the other side, so the eastern side of the site. So again, the previously approved is to the top of this screen, and the proposed is now at the bottom. So again, landscaping is basically the same. We've actually increased the hedge planting along the southern boundary here where there was a fence, because this is the rear of the gardens, just to improve that impact with views towards those properties. So basically, it's not considered that there's really any real change to the character and appearance of the area. Whilst there is the additional units, they do fall within the policy. There's still adequate spacing and enough spacing between the units to still appear low density in their appearance and suitable for edge of an urban area where you can see it across the countryside. The design and materials tie in with what's already been approved, and the only other issue was to do with drainage. So if you read the report, there was a comment from Southern Water raising concerns with the drainage, but the drainage scheme on this application has previously been approved. So obviously through the outline and the reserve matters, there would have been drainage conditions. Those conditions have been discharged. Southern Water, KCC SUDS and Environment Agency have all commented on those and raised no objections, and they are currently building the development in accordance with that drainage plan. So I've tried to get Southern Water to comment back on this and gone back to them a number of times, but just haven't had a chance to receive their comment before this meeting. But they've raised issues saying they've not seen the plan, but that there's a clear letter from them on the condition discharge for the outline saying they have no objections to the application in terms of the drainage strategy, and the exact same drainage strategy is being submitted for this application as the previous. So it's not reasonable for us to object to it at all to do with the drainage. So in terms of affordable housing, 30% is being achieved in accordance with the original approval. Financial contributions are being secured for the development for the additional units that are being added to make sure we've satisfied the habitat regs and achieved some additional contributions towards KCC as well. And therefore, it's currently recommended for defer and delegation subject to the legal agreement coming in, securing the contributions in the heads of terms within the report. Thank you.
Thank you. I move that the officer's recommendation to defer and delegate is approved. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
And do I have any speakers? Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that I can't see any reason not to support this application. I'm very pleased to see that we have the full 30% affordable housing. That's 12 units of considerable size. I like the fact that the proposed landscape buffer has been kept and the drainage issues addressed. So I see no reason to recommend refusal. Thank you.
Councillor Bayford just beat you to it. Councillor Garner.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. And thanks to other committee members for bearing with. I've been here quite a few hours, but there are a couple of things I want to raise on this. I mean, one of my concerns here, and having read the report and having read the report that Places for People put in the committee room about this, and one of these concerns is around the drainage. I mean, it is important. This, while we are looking at this one application, there are a lot of houses being built up there, and there are likely to be a lot of issues around drainage. And it seems from the report that one of two things is happening. Either Southern Water aren't engaging with the process because they're leaving the Environment Agency and the lead local flood authority to come up with agreements, and Southern Water don't seem to be making the service available or participating properly to be able to agree to or sign off on these things, or Southern Water are doing that and they're being ignored. I mean, what they've written in the report is quite detailed. They're stating that there is, and I don't claim to fully understand this, but they're stating there is minimal hydrogeological understanding displayed within the drainage strategy. Now, I understand that there is a drainage strategy for the overall site, and why it would be different for this. But why are they doing this? Are they throwing a bit of a tantrum or what? It's important and it needs to be fully understood that everybody's joined up and that it's all being done properly. So that's the one point. The other is something that's come up as a result of reading the report, because I'm interested and should be pleased, I think, that actually Places for People who are registered affordable housing provider and intend, subject to grant funding, to provide all 40 units as affordable housing, which is positive, which is a good thing. Then reading what TDC Housing state in the report, they're saying that the whole site affordable housing mix is compliant and reflective of the district needs, although there is a small over provision of 3-bed units, and that's based on the previous assumption, I'm assuming, that 30% of these were going to be for affordable houses. And nobody's knocking an affordable provision, but now we're adding another 30 affordable units that are all 3-bed or 4-bed units, which is now an even more of an over provision of those. And I'm not saying that affordable units is good. That's what's happened over the last couple of years is that we've positively, as a council, well, certainly in the last year or so, positively as a council, we've purchased as a council these affordable units to offer as council houses. Now, I'm not quite sure how that will work with Places for, I keep trying to call them People for Places for People, because I think they build and then provide them themselves. And I assume that they build and provide them themselves for families on our waiting list, which is a good thing. And I would like confirmation that is the case. But if they are going to do that, and we are as a council positively looking at buying these, so as we add them to our stock of council houses, is there a way that actually, if these are all going to be, if they're going to be 40 affordable units built here, is there a way that we as a council can interject in this process earlier on to say, well, if you're going to be building 40 affordable units on this site for families on our council waiting list, could we actually, rather than having 30 3-bed and 10 4-bed, could we change that mix so as it suits what the TDC housing people are saying, the people on our list, so as actually we can provide the council houses, affordable houses, that we actually need for those on our waiting list. So they're the two things. My concerns about Southern Water and the other one about the affordable housing. Thank you.
In terms of the affordable housing, obviously we can only consider 30% anyway, even though they're saying they're offering more. In terms of this actual provision, another consideration we have to give it is the design of the buildings and the type of buildings we actually want to be there, as well as the need. In this particular instance, because this is south of the development site, and you're going to see this in longer views from outside the area, we're really keen to have units that enabled larger spaces between the units. And really, you tend to only really get that with larger units. Otherwise, you'd end up with like more smaller terrace units along there, which we really wouldn't want to see. So, or blocks of flats as well. So in this particular application, yes, I agree with what you're saying. We always look for a range of unit mix when we have the needs assessment, and we always look to assess an application against that to make sure we try to achieve the correct mix so that there is a range. In this particular instance, they're over providing anyway on the affordable housing, which is not something we can actually consider those unit sizes. But for this particular layout, from a design point of view, we would want them to be larger units.
If I can just add to that, in terms of every legal agreement where we're securing affordable housing, there is a standard provision which requires there to be agreement with a local lettings plan, which basically means that everyone on our register goes in those affordable homes. So that's part of the planning agreement. It's literally the boilerplate agreement that requires that. That's through mostly the Section 106 agreements is where the actual schedule of affordable houses is actually agreed to the exact tenure if it hasn't already been specified in plans. And obviously, as you say, the housing team do play into that, factor into that question about the mix, but as Emma's just outlined, there are other considerations sometimes as well. Just on the drainage point briefly, you'll have seen from the narrative that initially it was proposed that surface water drainage would go into the combined sewer at the front and all on Canterbury Road West, and KCC raised issues with regards to the capacity of that. In terms of, because we're in the source protection or groundwater source protection zones, and the issue with the aquifer, that's why the Environment Agency are involved. So they are primarily the ones that look at the impact, not Southern Water. Obviously, while Southern Water are responsible for the issue of providing the water supply, the Environment Agency are the body that look at this, and that's why the detailed discussions came in about a drainage strategy, including attenuation basin and infiltration and pollution control methods, which was then subsequently agreed by KCC, the Environment Agency, and Southern Water didn't raise any objection to it. In terms of the intentions of Southern Water in raising the objection at this stage in the process, it would be guesswork, frankly, and we are genuinely struggling to understand why they are as intransigent as they are on this point, when we've literally got a bit of paper that says they've raised no concerns about this, and they were involved. It does mean obviously that the flows don't go into the combined sewer. Don't know what that does in terms of infrastructure charge or improvements down the line which potentially come through the site. No idea. But fundamentally, the Environment Agency are happy with infiltration at this point as long as the drainage strategy is followed, and that's what's conditioned. Thanks.
Councillor Wing.
Could I ask about the buffer zone? I'm quite interested in what's the other side of the buffer zone. So is it just more housing? It's becoming quite densely built on that area. So the buffer zone shrunk, but what I'm really interested in is what is the other side of that buffer zone? Is it another development?
I'll just go up to the aerial view. The buffer zone is in this location here, so it's just next to Hayne Road, and then phase 3 is on the other side of the road, so that would be the buffer. So there'd be new tree planting along Hayne Road.
Thank you for that. I mean, I've got concern that the buffer has shrunk. I wouldn't have been concerned if that field had stayed. But now I'm a bit concerned because that buffer zone shrunk, and I do think that when you're driving out that way, it's just the land is just being consumed with buildings, and there doesn't seem to be any significant open space in some of the developments, which I think is really important for people's mental health and well-being. I know we've got that the south side of it, but it just seems to be sprawling and sprawling and sprawling. That's just a comment.
Okay, do I have any other speakers? Councillor Kay Bright.
Sorry, just following on from Councillor Wing's point, that area south, I don't want to just skip that though. I mean, is that open space? Is it left for residents to use? Because it looks like that is good open space that people can enjoy. Where you've got the word proposed.
In this area here? Yeah, that's all through the original reserve matters application for this phase. That is all open space, and you can see there's a path that runs through it, so you can do dog walking and things through that area. So there's a really large area of open space associated with this application. Obviously, you're not seeing all of it because you're not seeing the whole layout of the whole phase. You're only seeing a very small part of it. But there's lots of open space within it. There's a quick play areas with further up, and then all the way down south of this. There's, I mean, like I say, I'm not showing the extent of it here, but it is quite a deep area that does have meadow planting and then movement through with pedestrian links all the way around it as well, just for a nice walking area with benches and things next to it as well.
Okay, in that case, I will put the officer's recommendation to defer and delegate to the vote. Those in favour? And those against? And abstain? Thank you. That's carried. Thank you. Right, 1 minute. Got on the right page. I shouldn't need to look this up. That concludes the business for this meeting. Thank you for your attendance and good night.